Hey guys, this week's music is brought to you by Well Worn Boot. They're one of the 6 acts performing at Buffalo Blog's second annual holiday party on December 15th at DBGB's. The show starts at 10 and entrance is only $5. Today's guest is Beth Manos Brickey, the founder of Tasty Yummies and co-founder of Hero Design. Beth came down, talked about why she started her blog, along with the challenges and benefits of her gluten, dairy, and processed foods-free diet. Let's get to it.
A profile on Buffalo Spree that you
were in there as well?
Yes, I was. Yes.
I haven't actually, this is embarrassing. I haven't looked at it or read it. I was on Hurdle 2 days ago, or Friday, whenever it was, dropping shirts off at Modern Nostalgia and dropping prints off at Blue Hill Kitchen. And all of the stores there just gotten their delivery that day, and nice. I'm talking to somebody, and I didn't hear a word they were saying, so I just want to open the magazine to make sure I don't look stupid. So I found my page, I opened it, took an iPhone photo, closed it, and didn't look. I haven't read any of the feature. And
nice.
My mom writes me yesterday, 2 days ago. I've been to every store in Buffalo. I can't find it. I'm like, it's not on newsstands yet. It was just to subscribers. So I haven't seen it beyond my little
Your little
face.
Nice.
My little pickle mustache face.
Yeah, I like the pickle mustache. It's pretty fun.
I was very interested to see where that was going to... We had so much fun taking the photos.
Did you have Casey as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm not... I'm super uncomfortable in front of cameras. Like, I get really awkward. So the first few shots, I'm like, okay, this is okay. They're loosening me up. And then they're like, now make a pickle mustache. I'm like, okay. And now turn the sandwich into a telephone. And that's when I found out about that song that's on the top 40, Call Me Maybe.
Okay, yes.
They're like, don't you know that song? I'm like, no. They're like, say, Call Me Maybe. I'm like, no, I don't know the song. Make the top of your sandwich into a little hat. And
wow.
Like, what are they going to put in the magazine?
You're just in your head, you're like, I'm going to be on the cover of this magazine with a sandwich on my head.
Yeah, or like my mouth wide open, who knows. So I was worried, but it was actually the most fun I've ever had getting my photo taken also.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of cool. We did it at like a little bar in South Buffalo. And out 911 Tavern.
Oh, he loves that place.
It's my favorite wings in Buffalo, hands down. And
never forget.
And we're standing there, and like he's taking my picture, and it's like on a dead Tuesday, and then there's just like a bunch of regulars at the bar, and they're just like looking at me like, what are they doing here? And I'm just like standing with like a wing in front of him, like. Ah.
Well, the best thing about Casey and his wife, I can't think of her name right now. They don't. I expected them to come in and have either talked to the people at the restaurant or to go in and say, hey, we're doing this.
Yeah. Because
when he emailed me, he went through my list and he's like, I think we're going to go to Merge at such and such day at this time. And I'm like, okay, he's got it all figured out. And like the day before, I'm like, they're not open at that time, right? He was like, oh, I didn't know. Well, then let's go to this other place on your list. And so we ended up at Globe.
Okay.
And so I show up and I'm waiting for them and I'm thinking they've already talked to them and they know we're coming.
Yeah.
So he's like, well, order your sandwich. And I order my sandwich and sit down. And he's like, okay, let's do this. And everyone there working is like, are they taking photos of the food? Should we have made it look better? I'm like, I don't know if they are. I thought they had no clue. He took artwork. You know how they have artwork for sale? Like they do different artists. He was taking artwork off the walls. And I'm like, okay, I guess. And then he told me that's when he said, a classic Mark Brickey line. You just, however he worded it, he said, just do it and you ask for forgiveness later.
Nice.
How do you put that?
It's better to beg for forgiveness than ask for permission.
Exactly.
Nice.
But part of being a good photographer is being a bit of an asshole.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. It's the most invasive thing you could ever do, and you just gotta kind of be like, "Fuck everybody, I'm going to go for it."
Yeah. Well, I was really impressed though because nobody knew what was going on, and nobody really cared. They were just like, "What's going on?"
Yeah. Yeah. I asked him. I was like, "Should I call?" And so I called, and I talked to the owner, and they're like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." I was like, "Yeah, is it okay if we bring a camera?" He's like, "Uh-huh, yeah." I was like, "All right, we'll be there tomorrow." So I remember like at the social media talk, you kind of talked about how you got into it, but I was curious like about how even before the blog started, how your whole gluten-free, more natural diet like began. Like how long ago are we talking about that?
The gluten-free has been in this coming February will be 8 years.
Wow. Okay.
I went through most of college I was always active. I played volleyball. I was very, active in lots of different things, and I always had a stomach ache, or
Okay.
always had stomach problems or digestion problems. And so at some point I got sent to a gastroenterologist, and they're like, okay, we're going to test you for this, and we're going to test you for this. And so that's going back probably 12, 15 years. So they
damn.
tested me for lactose intolerance, and they did an upper GI and all these things. And they're like, you know, at the time, the catch-all was you have IBS.
Okay.
Keep a food journal, see what bothers your stomach, and don't eat it. I'm like, well, I'm in college. Like, it's hard enough to keep up with my work and then playing volleyball, like keeping a food journal. So I just was like, screw this. It's too much work. So fast forward another, God knows how many years, and I just was still having stomach aches all the time. And it was like, just, it would go from one extreme to the other. And I won't get into the specifics, but you can imagine.
Yeah.
So we have a really good friend of our family who's a chiropractor, and she's super into like holistic living and natural eating and supplements and the whole nine. And so she said, why don't you do a cleanse, a 30-day cleanse? And it was the kind that was supported with like a powder-based supplement.
Yeah, okay.
So it was,
I've seen those.
it was very regimented of like the first 2 weeks you remove these certain things, and then after the first 2 weeks you add some things back in, but then you remove this. But for the majority of the cleanse, it was no known common allergens such as gluten. I couldn't have, I think, any grains at all, maybe, just because a lot of people have issues with just grains in general. Nuts, obviously meat, seafood, dairy, sugar, caffeine, the whole nine. I mean, pretty much what I was eating was vegetables, some select fruit, some beans.
Yeah.
And I think a couple of grains that were on the list.
So I mean, before this cleanse started, was your diet just whatever?
I was just an average buffalo eater. I mean, sometimes I had chicken. I mean, I always ate well because my dad's 100% Greek, and he's very into cooking. He did all of the cooking growing up. My mom did the baking. So, and we never went out to eat as kids. It was very rare that it was a special occasion that we got pizza. So I was always eating, even before that, I was always eating home cooked meals. Okay. Somewhat fresh, but I mean, I kind of fell into the category of most average Americans, a lot of processed foods. Yeah. I loved chicken fingers and, you know, all that shit.
So I mean, when you started this, it was a pretty...
Oh, it was... He remembers because it was not long into us dating. And the only reason I remember everything about it was because halfway through the cleanse, my grandmother died. And it was my dad's mother, so it was the Greek family. So part of being Greek and someone dying means eating and eating more. And then when you're done, you eat again. And so... I told myself, because I was so sick of always feeling terrible, that I'm just going to go through the cleanse. And I went to my grandmother's funeral and all the days after, and I stuck to the cleanse. Jeez. And I had my stupid, disgusting cabbage soup and passed up on all the delicious Greek foods. But the whole point of the cleanse was to clean my system of everything that could be upsetting it and start over, basically. And so then you slowly introduce foods one at a time, 1 week at a time, 1 day at a time, to see your body's reaction. Yeah. And as soon as I ate gluten, very sick. I was like, shoot. So I tested it a lot because I was like, I can't, how am I going to, maybe it's just this kind of gluten. Or
you weren't ready to admit.
I wasn't. And at the time, I mean, 8 years ago, that wasn't even a thing.
Yeah, gluten-free, nobody knew what that was.
Nobody knew what it was. There was no aisles at Wegmans. There was no products that said gluten-free. It was like, you can't have bread, pizza, cookies, chicken fingers, you know, all the things that I feel like
the chicken fingers thing really...
Well, there's a lot that goes with the chicken fingers, but it was just like this loss. Yeah. And I'm like, okay. And so then I would say it's got to be 4 to 5 years I did the gluten-free thing, but I ate pretty good, but I fell into the trap of, if I went to Wegmans and it said gluten-free, I would buy it. And it didn't matter if I wanted it or if it sounded good. It was just, I was stoked that there was something that I knew was safe, and I didn't have to prepare it. So I spent a handful of years eating a lot of processed food, a lot of junk. Okay. And so I was healthier in that I wasn't having the traditional digestive upsets that I had for the majority of my life. Yeah. But I was weighed down with processed foods, and so I put on weight. I put a lot of weight on, and it slowly crept on because I was just, it wasn't, oh my God, this terrible thing happened to me. It was just, I'm going to eat this cookie. I'm going to eat this pizza. I'm going to eat this because it's all gluten-free. Yeah. So then Now it's coming up on. Sorry, go
I
ahead.
was going to say, I mean, if you're eating a restrictive diet and you see things that are like literally advertised towards you.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I feel like people would come in. I worked at Consumers for like a summer when I was younger, and we just started getting gluten-free beer, and there would be people who would come in like every week and like be like, I don't even really like it that much, but
But it's beer.
but it's beer and it's
There was
gluten-free.
only up until the last, I don't know, the last 2 or 3 years, it's all just kind of exploded in good ways and in bad. But up until then, there was like one gluten-free beer, and I used to tell him all the time, I've never tasted it, but the blue stuff at a barber shop is what I imagined that beer tasted like. It was so terrible. So I just gave up on beer.
Wow.
So about almost 3 years ago now, I just turned 33 last week.
Okay. Happy birthday.
Thank you. 3 years before, obviously, I turned 30.
Yeah.
I had my 30th birthday. Mark threw me a really great surprise party. There were tons of photos of me walking into the room. I thought I was going to die when I saw the photos because I was like, I'm fat. I turned 30. I'm about to be middle-aged, even though it's a way off. But in my head, I was like, oh my God, I'm 30, and I've gotten to that point I swore I would never get to. So that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to sit here and figure out what I need to do. And I spent that kind of fall, winter deciding what my plan of attack was because I've done the Weight Watchers thing, and then I do the gym, and I'm like, I just don't feel good, and I don't like how I look. So that's when I decided to, on top of my gluten-free diet, cut out all processed foods, go completely fresh, whole, all natural, just not rely on, hey, this is gluten-free. And part of it is that it terrified me to make my own gluten-free cookies, to make my own gluten-free bread.
Yeah. I mean, were you a big home cook at this point, or?
Yeah, but I mean, I had my staple. I was just like my dad is. You have your repertoire of 10 to 12 meals that you always make, and they were naturally gluten-free, but like I said, we would fall into the traps of pizza night, and it would be some disgusting gluten-free pizza that came from a box that I was so stoked because it was pizza.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I could have easily been making my own crust and buying, local cheese and putting the stuff on it and being fine. So I did that, and I've never done anything in my life where the weight fell off quicker. I dropped 30 pounds in 2 months.
Damn.
And I wasn't starving myself. I was eating really well. I started it with a cleanse to kind of remove everything, to not shock my system, to kind of ease into it, but just to kind of give me the willpower to say enough. And that was it. That was the end of it for me, and I sort of changed then.
Damn.
Yeah.
I mean, like, to somebody like myself who is not a picky eater, whatever, it sounds like going into that would be like a lot of work or extra effort going into, buying fresh groceries every week, and it was a lot of work, and it remains to be a lot of work. Yeah. And it's probably the number one thing that people ask me or say to me. Yeah. I'm so envious. And I'm like, well, just do it. Yeah. Well, I can't. I don't have time. And I'm like, well, it is a lot of work. It's a lot of preparing. It's a lot of planning. It's a lot of knowing your ingredients and knowing how to cook. Yeah. But I think if more people just said, okay, on Sundays, I'm giving myself an hour. And I'm going to sit down, whether it's looking through cookbooks, through magazines, on blogs, on Epicurious, whatever websites, just look at what's seasonal and just make a plan. And then from there say, okay, these are the things I have in my pantry. These are the things I need to buy. Yeah. It's a lot of work, but it just becomes part of your routine. And now it's like every Sunday I meal plan for the week. If it means going to the co-op after yoga and getting a few things, or it means going to Wegmans and getting $250 worth of groceries. Yeah. I do it because it means the world to my health, obviously. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, if you feel great, then it's definitely paid off. I mean, so when did you decide to start Tasty Yummies in this process?
Tasty Yummies started... So I did that cleanse... I can always remember when, because we went to South by Southwest, and I decided to do that big, full-on, massive cleanse into the processed food free.
As you're in Austin, Texas.
Because I was like, I'm just going to be the end. This will be the end of it. Because I can't start it before. So we'll go, we'll have our barbecue, we'll eat our shit, we'll have our margaritas, and we'll come home and I'll start it.
Okay. I was going to say, I thought you started there, and I was like, dude, Austin is ridiculous.
It was like the last hurrah. So then I started the cleanse and started that type of eating in March, and I would say by May I had started the blog because it's been nearly 3 years now.
Okay.
2.5. And it was mostly because in March I started it and I just went full on, all in, and by May I had lost the 30 pounds. And people were like, what the hell are you doing? I'm like, nothing. I just stopped eating junk. I'm still eating every day. I'm still cooking like crazy.
Yeah.
I eat what I feel like is a lot of food, and it's just falling off. And people are like, you have to tell me what you're doing. And so that was how it started. And also Mark doesn't like that I love to make new things, and he doesn't get repeat meals because I'm always trying something new. So he's like, I need a place to go back to what you've made already. So
almost like a menu.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, Friday's the spice of life, but if you like something, you'd like to at least get a shot at getting it the second time. And shit was just coming and going and coming and going. And I'm like, she's like, what do you want for dinner? I'm like, well, I don't know, because I can't remember anything I've eaten in the last 30 days.
So when did the transition from having your 10 staples to wanting to make something new all the time? Like, did that come with the challenge of the new diet where you decided?
I think it was probably around all that same time of really changing my diet and doing the cleanse to kick it off, and the Tasty Yummies. Tasty Yummies for sure is a big reason that keeps me trying new things and making new things and keeping myself out of a rut, because I feel this obligation to people that are reading to always be doing something new, obviously. And I mean, once you've got a blog, you feel this like, okay, I haven't put a recipe up in 4 days, that people are waiting.
Yeah. Do you have like the itch? Like,
oh yeah, and it gets worse and worse. And I hate, sometimes it's
I can,
horrible, the obsession.
I can feel you with that one. How much has Tasty Yummies like started to consume more and more of your time over the last 2.5 years,
yes,
3 years?
Absolutely. And more so in the last, would you say 6 months? The last 6 months, I don't know what's changed. I don't know if it's just that it's just the nature of a business of any kind. It just starts to grow and it snowballs. But in the last year, I think Pinterest, as cheesy and dorky as it sounds, has made a huge difference, because once the everyday person could start saying, okay, I'm going to save this for later, but I'm going to save it for later in a public way.
Yeah.
There are days that I'm like, what happened to my traffic? And there's just this one big Pinterest mogul that pins one of my recipes, and it all of a sudden shoots up.
Pinterest moguls.
There are these people. I don't know what the deal with Pinterest is, but when you join it, there's like a core, I don't know, 5 to 10 people. I don't know if they were there when Pinterest originated.
Like the trendsetters?
Yeah, or like the originators of Pinterest, that literally they just kind of without asking you, but they do have that little moment where they ask you if you want to follow them, and you're new to Pinterest, you're like, okay, accept. Well, then you have these people that everybody on Pinterest follows.
Yeah.
So literally they have millions of followers.
Jeez.
I have had 1 or 2 of those people pin one of my recipes, and it makes the difference of like, there was a time when I was getting 2,000 hits a day on average.
Yeah.
And then one of my recipes got pinned, and it was like, bam, 6,500 in a day.
Wow.
And then after that, it levels off to this higher level where people are like, oh, I found this and I'm going to go to it every day.
Wow.
And it just keeps, then you have this time where it's like this, and then somebody says, I'm going to pin this recipe, and it bumps up.
Yeah.
And it's been really cool to watch the stats. It's kind of obsessing.
They're like Oprah's like book club, basically.
It's true, though.
Wow. Because we've had 2 other food bloggers who do like mostly recipe focused ones. Nina Baroni, who does Buffalo Foodie, and Emily, I can never say her last name, but she does Emily Bites. And they both said the same thing, that like Pinterest is like has changed the game of food blogging.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, that, and then I know we talked about it on that panel, but there's those Food Gawker and I can never remember all the different names. Food Gawker's the big one that I use. That it's recipe based always, but it's people submitting photos from recipe blogs or just even just food magazines.
Yeah.
And they don't accept everything. It's based on the photography, and they will tell you the lighting's too harsh, the contrast is too high or not high enough, cropping is bad, and they won't accept it. It's all about how good the food photos look, because it's trying to entice people to click through. And if you can get in on that scene, it's just putting your stuff to a broader audience. So it's really fun to watch, but
Yeah.
it gets obsessive, and you have to kind of say, okay, Pinterest is worth my time. This is worth my time. Facebook, this, that. But I have to pull back from this. There's like blogs that host these weekly allergen-free Wednesdays, and I want you to...
Oh, guest posts and
yeah,
stuff
not
like that?
guest posts. You know how they have those things where you can like submit a link
Oh, okay,
and
yeah.
it aggregates like
Yeah,
in
yeah.
real time? We want you to submit 3 recipes a week. And I was doing that. And then there's just sometimes I'm like, okay, I've got to tone this down. I've got to step back because I do have a business and
Yeah.
a life and a husband.
I mean, it benefits. I mean, you do work from home, so I feel like the potential / threat is that you could get very comfortable of just
Absolutely.
just throwing all your time into that.
Yeah. I mean, I think having somebody to say, hey, you got to do this.
Yeah,
Don't
we
forget
got
about
some
this.
we got some orders coming up for
Yeah.
or whatnot.
But it's also really nice because moving our business home
Yeah.
last April, we closed our store and moved our business
Yeah.
home, and that's I think one of the big reasons I've been able to grow Tasty Yummies, because there were times when we had the store that I would pre-make meals that I could, like, I remember specifically I made some sweet potato with pomegranates and coconut milk, and I packed it all up in baggies and separate bags because that's when, in the wintertime, that's when the light was out, was when we were at the store.
Yeah.
So I would either bring leftovers, or I was all the time shooting food at the store. And now it's like I make these elaborate lunches for us so that I can take it when the lighting's perfect.
Yeah.
And then we eat a huge lunch and go back to work.
I mean, how has the photography aspect come around? Because I've talked to like the other people and like they've gotten like all serious. There's like a box setup that they have. Like, has that like become a I mean, were you into photography beforehand or?
We had an SLR. I wouldn't say I was into photography. We had an SLR more for like product photography for our own website and just to kind of screw around with. I think being graphic designers, it's important to have a good, solid SLR. But we just kind of milled around with it. And when I started the blog, I just kind of used it with the camera, the stock lens that it came with. And it's definitely become also an obsession because I've since bought lenses, and sometimes Mark has to come out and hold foil, and I'm always buying props, and we'll go to Anthropologie and I'll buy one plate and one napkin, and
that is great.
At my birthday last week, a girlfriend bought me a plate just for food photos, like, but it's fun because it's going somewhere, I feel like.
I mean, I can attest to the part of you getting sucked in, and like, when I look at what, like, I don't know if this is you, but looking at what we did like 3 years ago and seeing like some of the pictures we wrote and like how things were laid out, and like looking at it, I'm like, oh my god, that's so bad. Like, I just want to go back and change everything. But
I do, but I also feel like and I feel like this even with our business doing graphic design, and you're always looking back at the last thing like, oh, it could have been better.
Yeah.
And then when you go way back, you're like, I can't believe I did that. I'm so embarrassed. But then there's that moment where you realize that that's what I can look back at, those really old photos where I no joke was putting food on like a coffee table in the living room at like 9:00 at night with a terrible like living room lamp. And I look back at it now and I'm like, God, I wouldn't make or eat anything from this website. I can't even believe that anyone looked at it.
yeah.
But it's really fun to see the growth. And when people go back, they're like, I made this and I love it. I'm like, I can't believe that anyone even clicks on that link, clicks on anything after they see that photo. I think it's really fun to see the growth and the change. But
Yeah.
it is really painful sometimes when you're like, someone does pin one of those and you're like, oh.
That's not me anymore. how's the community been is there like a section of the blogging world that's like gluten free?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I mean, do you have like people that you know now because of this?
It's really funny because I feel like a dork saying it even to Mark. I'm like, oh, my friend wrote me, and he's like, what friend? I'm like, oh, her name's Leanne. I've never met her, and then I have to explain her blog. He's like, oh, yeah, I know Leanne.
Nice.
There's definitely like a little sub community.
Yeah.
The thing that I find interesting / annoying is just like any other world, and there's clicks, and because not in a bad way, and I don't feel like, oh, I'm left out, but it's really fascinating to watch, just like any other kind of human formation of social circles.
Oh god, yeah.
it's really funny to watch, like, oh, those people are now buddied up and they're promoting each other's blogs, every other thing they're commenting. There's a lot of people in the blogging community, a lot of women, and this will sound really sexist, but there's a lot of women that's all they do. Their husband goes off to work and makes enough money to support their family, and these women, whether they have kids or not, they have these incredible blogs because that's all they do. That's their whole livelihood is that and any money they can generate from it. And then they get a book deal, and next thing you know, they're this whole entity of themselves. Jeez. And I'm like, God, I don't know how I can ever get to that point because I have my time and my energy is so split because I have so many loves. But yeah, there's definitely a community within the gluten-free world, and there's the celebrity gluten-free bloggers that everybody knows, and then there's that like subsection of like, you know, and then the new people that go around and find everybody. It's fun.
I become fascinated with any like section of culture or anything like that.
I know,
like
that's how I am.
I could just like I like things like that. I would love like just a documentary of like following like food bloggers or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and it's for me the thing that's really I struggled with in the beginning that I think held my blog back from kind of getting to a certain level is that I didn't want. There's a lot of people that have gluten-free blogs that have gluten-free right in the name. Gluten-free girl, gluten-free goddess, gluten-free, sugar-free, like. Just they put it out there and they're like, this is me, this is what I do, I'm gluten-free.
Yeah.
And I wanted it to be known that all of my recipes and everything I do was gluten-free from the get-go. But I wanted it to speak to people that weren't gluten-free because I try really hard, for the most part, to make my recipes very approachable, very simplified, not like, hey, you have to go to 7 stores to get these 3 things that you've never heard of. And I definitely have recipes that have ingredients that people, an everyday home cook would look at and say, what the hell is psyllium husk doing in this bread?
Yeah.
But I try to keep it to where the average home cook who just wants to eat healthy or eat seasonal, you know, can make my food. And so I stayed away from really putting it out there in a gluten-free way. I thought it would scare people. And then I started to realize that I needed to sort of find that place, that middle ground, because there are people, I have a lot of people that read my blog that are regular gluten eating folk that they like this side salad that I made, or, you know, or they have someone coming in from out of town that is gluten free, but they just, you know, they read it because they like the food that I'm cooking. So it's a fine line of trying to get too deep into a world where I don't feel like I'll be able to get out of, but also making sure those people know I exist.
Yeah. So I feel like with you guys being graphic designers, I know that I want to say recipe piracy is kind of a thing, and I'm sure you guys, you know, have to deal with that just from the nature of your business that you guys are involved in, and with that's like an issue that you have to worry about. I mean, is that a thing that you have to police at all, or has it been pretty good about people not, you know, straight up copying your recipes? And
I have so much stress about that with our business that I try not to think about with my blog, because at the end of the day, unless somebody's producing and publishing a book and stealing my recipes and maybe making an entire book of my recipes, I honestly don't care. Yeah. Because I'm not making my livelihood off of this.
True.
Yet.
True. Yeah.
Maybe someday I will, but right now I'm not. And so, you know, sometimes when somebody puts it up and they don't properly cite me, it makes me a little annoyed, but
you're not going out there sending emails?
No, and I do that with our business.
Oh, you have to. I mean, yeah, that's your livelihood.
And truth be told, when I started blogging, I never have ever stolen someone's recipe and pawned it off as my own. But I did a lot of adapting recipes, and I did a lot of I'm making this and changing one little small thing and then putting it on my blog. Yeah. But it was a really good way for me to kind of get my feet in and sort of learn how to do it. Yeah. And I kind of progressed from there. So when I see new bloggers that use a recipe of mine and don't even make it and take their own photo, and they do cite me, but it's sort of very low effort, and they're literally making their blog out of other people's work. Yeah. It annoys me for a second, and then I'm like, you know what? They're going to grow past that, or they're just going to stop doing it because they're going to realize there's no point in it. Yeah. But I try not to think about it.
That's good. I mean, I figured it's a kind of a little bit of a parallel in those two worlds that you.
Do you get people taking your reviews and passing them off on their own? Like, do you have to worry about that in the type of blogging you do?
In the reviews, no, because the way we write, it's really personable. And so if somebody copied it, it would be like I was telling a story on somebody else's blog. And our pictures, for the most part, if somebody's going to use our pictures, we get a little request asking if they can. Mm-hmm. So that hasn't been an issue, but Buffalo's like restaurant food blogging scene is so small.
It's
like,
you.
It's me. It's me. And then like people who will write like a post about like, I went to Betty's and had this, and then they never write anything ever again. So it's a different, I guess.
Yeah.
My audience is a lot smaller and a little bit
so
more
specific.
Yeah. So when you mention people who go to your website who aren't gluten free, do you think that there's a benefit to somebody who could incorporate like partial gluten free into their diet, or do you think that has to be like an all or nothing kind of transition? Because I know your husband, I know he enjoys junk food. I've seen pictures of fast food options.
Can I talk for a second?
Sure.
No. Yes.
Okay, so here's the deal. Saying you're addicted to food is pretty lame, right? So let's pretend like I'm talking about prostitutes, so it's interesting. And I drive by prostitutes at night, and I see them, and I drool over them, and I look at all the signs and the value mills with these prostitutes, and I want them so bad. But the gluten-free food that she cooks, I'm never like super excited to eat pumpkin risotto, okay? I've never ordered off a menu. I'm not excited about it at all. But it's really, really good food.
Yeah.
And I can't deny the way that I feel after I eat it, okay?
Yeah.
But when I go to these prostitutes and have, I'm chasing the dragon now. Because, like, in my mind, like, a cheeseburger sounds so great. Okay?
Oh, yeah. All those cheeseburgers at those prostitution chains were fantastic. You're not remembering the bad ones.
So I go to this prostitute with these yellow arches on her legs, and I have one of her cheeseburgers, and I'm chasing a dragon because the food that I love doesn't taste as good as I want it to be. And
Because I've ruined you.
And I do feel like shit a little bit after spending time with my prostitutes.
Oh yeah, that's natural.
And it's just like, I'm really, really torn. I'm in a weird crossroad, okay? Because if I would have met her when we were dating and she was gluten-free, we never would have became a couple. We never would have got married. I love this woman. I'd step in front of a bus for her. And so I've adapted to the food. And the food that she cooks is so good and it's so enjoyable.
Yeah.
But it's not my essence. It's not like, it's not what I'm striving for.
Let's stop for a minute. Mark,
I'm talking about my prostitutes. Men are talking.
Mark's from Kentucky.
Okay.
Yes.
Mark grew up, like, when my family, there were, the food memories that I have of my family are, like, my dad's really good, I don't know, I can't think of something off the top of my head, but something my dad makes that's really good.
Yeah.
Souvlaki.
Or my mom makes Greek avlolemino soup, or at Christmas she always made homemade fresh cinnamon rolls in the shape of a Christmas tree. Like, all of my food memories are attached to homemade, things that my family made that were just gifts.
Yeah.
Mark's family food memories or childhood food memories are going to the gas station with his Momo and picking out those gross snowballs, or like the sticky bun cinnamon buns that could sit out for 7 years and never harden. So he has this attachment to his food that's so different than me. And so it's really interesting the further and further I go in this direction. He's going with me. I mean, when you look at the way we ate when we met and the way he ate when we met, he's traveled a very long, hard road, past a lot of prostitutes.
Yeah.
But
I love it.
It's hard because it's still his comfort. And, he doesn't drink, he's never smoked, he doesn't do anything. That's his, like, when I say, shit, I had a really shitty day, I want an awesome glass of wine or some, spiced rum and cider, he's like, I want this. And then there's me behind him barking at him like, you can't eat that! Do you know what's in that? That's cancer causing and it has nitrates and, glucose whatever and high fructose corn syrup and...
Getting to my point is, all the things I love aren't as good as what they used to be. Because I've been to the other side. I've had something better. Although what's better isn't exactly what I love, but I can taste the quality and the difference in it. And so I'm very, very spoiled.
You
and
just
I'm
have to give in.
I don't want to give in though, because I'm so fucking sick of like, I love food. And I'm always
You
standing
should
in
hang
the...
out with him and go to 9/11.
I would love to hang out with him. I'm always standing in the grocery store. I'm always standing someplace with the angel on one shoulder and two devils on the other shoulder. And it's like, I'm sick of where food's at as a culture, because I'm sick of there's just guilt with everything. This has that in it, and that has that in it. And it's just like, my God, like, I'm this close to becoming a dog and just eating like pellets like twice a day and saying fuck it and throwing it all away. Like, do you remember the old days when men used to drink and they went to the horse track and they brought home $50 out of their paycheck? And now it's like, I'm an asshole because I drink corn syrup. And I understand why Coca-Cola is bad, but we're talking about one fucking Coca-Cola. We're not talking about a whiskey and a black eye.
I feel like we might have a divorce after this podcast.
No.
Oh my God.
It's all coming. It feels like on this couch with him standing there. We're at like a
Totally a therapy session. Yeah, but
Oh my
It
God.
really does. And
We have like a best of coming up at the end of the year, and I'm like, well, this is going to be a good chunk of it.
she's right. I mean, the food is better. It's healthier. You feel better
There's
afterwards.
here's the thing,
Your
though.
poop looks different afterwards.
Here's the thing, though. All of the junk food that you all want and eat, I
Yeah.
still want it. There is still this thing in
Yeah, I
me
was going to
that-
ask you.
Oh, yeah.
Like, do you have like?
Oh, yeah.
Do you have guilty pleasures though? Like, do you ever?
I never, ever cheat on the gluten-free thing because there's no denying how awful I feel after.
Yeah.
And there was a time...
So the benefit of having something for that split second is just going to be hours
never
of
worth it.
More willpower than anybody
But
I've
see,
ever met
everybody
in my
says
life.
that, and there's waking up the next day feeling like you can't get to the bathroom fast enough, and you are going to be sick all day, and you just feel sluggish and have a headache, and just the worst stomachache of your life. That's what happens when I eat gluten. Ugh. So it's willpower, absolutely, but there's also an element of like, this is going to happen to you. And I also know that if you are gluten intolerant, I don't know if I have celiac disease because I've never taken the tests because they require you to eat it for 30 days.
Yeah, I was going to say, because like now you could give like a false positive.
Absolutely. Yeah, I got tested for it a handful of years ago, and I'd already been gluten-free for 2 or 3 years, and it came up negative.
It's a weird system.
It is, and it's taking the test to just get a positive, to regardless if it's celiac disease or gluten intolerance, it's not worth it.
I don't know any other disease where it's like, make yourself really sick for like 30 days. And
I think the thing is, for most people, had I had that test way back in college when I was getting tested for lactose intolerance and all that, it would have been just like another one of those tests. But because nobody was testing for it then, and they didn't even think about it or know about it or acknowledge it, I wasn't tested for it then. There was a time, though, 2 years in on my gluten-free eating, where I would occasionally cheat for a terrible reason that's totally embarrassing. But chicken fingers were always my... I wanted it. I wanted it. And the thing is now you go to Wegmans, and in the gluten-free freezer case, there's multiple brands of gluten-free chicken fingers. Wegmans makes them now, and there's a couple of other companies. But because I've also shifted into this process-free eating, trying to eat whole foods and not
chicken fingers out of a box is not really fit into
I don't even know if there's meat in those at this point.
Have you tried to make your own gluten-free chicken fingers?
They're great.
I've made them, so you'll see further why Mark just can't stand me in my eating. I used to make them a lot, and they were really good. They weren't deep fried from Jim's Steakout good, but they were crispy and delicious, and I would just go to Wegmans and buy the chicken tenders and make my own batter and stuff, and then I would always bake them. Well, as part of my changing my diet 2 years ago, one of the things I also changed was, on top of the processed food that I've removed, I also only eat meat that I know comes from a local farm that wasn't loaded with hormones and antibiotics and is all, on a grass-fed diet.
I'm in the process of
it's
trying to go that route. It's
a commitment.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a little bit more of a financial commitment, too.
I think in the long run, we definitely eat less meat, but I think in the long run, we spend about the same per year that we used to. We are eating less of it, but the quality is better, and what it's doing for our health, and knowing that my money is going to a local farmer.
Oh God,
but
yeah.
It's ruined things like chicken fingers, because the only time we have chicken in our home, they're whole chickens that we get from our farmer the day that he processes them. So there's no chicken breasts in our house. There's no chicken tenders. Chicken tenders come from a guy that cut them from God knows what, and my farmer doesn't do that yet.
Beth is like if you would take her food, the way she started eating and her diet, it's kind of like a gamer. When you beat one level or one game, it's time to up the ante. And so, it was just gluten-free, and then it was gluten-free non-processed.
Yeah.
And now it's gluten-free and, critters that she knows who killed them. And so it's just like, I don't know what the next level in this game's going to be.
Well,
but
I took out dairy this year, too.
Dairy and cheese.
Wow.
She just took it out. I mean, she's crazy. I mean...
It's not...
Well, more power to you. I mean, if it makes you feel good, then...
That's ultimately what it is at the end of the day. I mean, there are some days I'm like, I have meltdowns on the kitchen floor when
What do we call it?
We call it food poopies.
What are you being right now?
A food poopy is what we call it. I don't know why.
You're just pouting. You want something.
It's the equivalent to hanger, except for you don't even know what you want. It's not even. Yeah, there are times that I become a food poopy where I'm hungry. I don't know what I want. I'm the only one that cooks in the house. I mean, he could, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
So I don't want to cook. I don't necessarily have a lot of food.
Yeah.
I'm sort of like, I hate myself for not having gluten and processed food and cheese, because I could just eat the worst shit right now and it'd be so easy.
Yeah.
A prostitute.
I could have a prostitute right now and it'd be so easy.
You just see her sitting on the kitchen floor spinning the Lazy Susan over and over again.
That is a true story. That was when the term food poopy came about, because I was on the floor totally pouting, spinning the Lazy Susan like, I'm hungry. I don't know what I want. We really don't have any food right now.
See, I mean, I think a lot of people who cook a lot could say that thing too, but then, then I'm going to Jim's Steakhouse next door. And, it's so, I mean, obviously this has changed the way you eat at restaurants. I mean, I'm assuming it's very, very occasional that you guys go out to eat, or...
Yeah, we don't go out to eat a lot, and there's a lot of reasons behind that. One is all of my restrictions. Two, financially, there was a time that we went out to eat a lot before the change in my diet, the huge change in my diet. And before we hired an accountant that looked at our books and was like, do you know how much money you guys spend on food?
I don't even want to have that conversation.
Well, don't get
with
an
anyone.
accountant or a bookkeeper.
I'm an accountant, and I just live in the dark.
Our bookkeeper was doing our everyday, help us with these bills at Hero and invoicing. And she one day was looking at our money as a whole and saying, okay, this is what you spend on supplies for Hero, this is what you spend on shipping and this and that. And she was like, you spend an ungodly amount of money on entertainment. And she's like, and I use that term loosely because it's all food. So that was kind of a reality check for me.
Yeah.
And the change in the way I eat. And we also travel a lot for work. So as much as I love the food scene in Buffalo,
it's
when we
nothing
travel,
compared to Austin.
When we travel, I get so excited to try new restaurants that when I come home, I'm like, I've been there. I don't need to spend money.
No, I hear you. I mean,
I would say for us, the big difference is that whereas a lot of people go out to eat for quality of food, we go out to eat for convenience and to get out of our house.
Yeah.
And I would say that we have, unless we're on the road and it's the excitement of eating out is so special, I'd say that locally, and granted, I think Buffalo has a tremendous food scene. It's one of the reasons why I moved here. But I would say when we go out to eat, we have about a 70 to 80% failure rate where we're just it wasn't that good.
Yeah.
We eat so good, so well at home.
I see the meals every day. You have something delicious on there.
It's fantastic, and I'm a total jerk because I don't I have so many guy friends who are like, my girl can't make can't defrost a chicken breast without messing it up, And everybody's so jealous of the food. I'm like, I just don't really think about it. I just kind of go downstairs and it's just kind of there. I'm like, and I look at the sink. I'm like, oh Jesus, to clean up on this one's going to take 45 minutes.
So we've always had a rule in our relationship and marriage that, because prior to the blog, prior to the obsessive craziness of me and cooking, I would always make the meals and he would always clean up. My parents always had that rule and it worked out nice. And he was like, listen, you do the work of making me a delicious meal That was probably when there was chicken fingers. He agreed to this, but he cleans up. And so now there's some days I get home from yoga and I make a recipe after yoga, and then I go up and I work, and then sometimes I make a recipe at lunch, and then I come down and I make dinner, and by the end of the night there are dishes everywhere. I do them. He does them most of the time.
Yeah. You gotta have that trade-off.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know though. It's like it's a weird thing for me because it's like I'm not at all excited about it, but I'm better for having gone through it, and I'm enjoying it.
Yeah,
it's just like the rush, man.
Oh, yeah.
You know us.
You're
junkies,
talking to a food junkie right
you might
here.
have to take up drinking to get it somewhere else.
I'm gonna have to find it somewhere because it's like my greatest love is slowly just getting whittled down to nothingness.
It's true.
I mean, but you have to admit that you feel better now than
absolutely, and
because you don't eat a full gluten diet.
Absolutely
not 100.
No.
But so even just having the portion of it impact your day still makes you feel better.
Well, and the thing is it's not the gluten free that makes me
also
feel
the
better.
non-processed.
It's the non-processed. That's the big thing. And I will say this: if you're not eating rice pasta, you're missing out because rice pasta is the best. It's so good. I really, really enjoy it. But I've never was a huge pasta guy. I'm white trash from the South. I mean, not a lot of pasta dishes go with fried chicken or Papa John's pizza. But so yeah, I mean, it's good. It's the non-processed part of the food and tasting real food.
Yeah,
and then also too, it's like she makes stuff that's so good, and you can see the pieces that go into it. And then when you go into the dangerous center of the grocery store where all the worst foods in the world exist,
yes,
that I love because they all have cartoon characters on them, and you look at the paragraph of chemicals that went into making my Captain Crunch limited edition Halloween Crunch Berry that makes my milk green. It's
that is in our house right now.
It's like, holy shit. Like, look at this paragraph.
Yeah.
Like, NASA has done things with less pieces, and they take people to the moon and back most of the time. And it's just... So then you look at that, and you're like, what? I mean, there's part of me that thinks that the preservatives will preserve my insides, and I will not ever die, and I'll live forever like a great warrior. Then there's parts of you that think, like, this is going to sound like a creepy thing, but if you look at our kids in America...
Yeah,
they've changed. Like little girls now have huge arms, like not like as in biceps. They have a bigger upper half, which also means their breast. That's how you sneak that in. But it's like the evolution of our children is different because they're all hopped up on processed foods and chemicals. And I want to be there with them, but I've seen the other side, so now I'm kind of torn in the middle.
Well, I mean, if you ever like just even scroll through Netflix and you look at the food category of documentaries, there is no documentary on there that has like everything's going great.
Yeah,
just watch this. We're going to talk about how great food is now.
Yeah, have some more McDonald's. Dude.
Yeah, there's none of those positive.
No, and that was actually one of the big things. We watched Food Inc.
Oh man!
Around the time that I had that realization that I was turning into a fat girl at 30. I watched that movie. I made him watch it with me, and then I fell into the downward spiral of the books and the documentaries, and I read it all, and I read more, and then I read the blogs, and then I was like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, that's when you're sort of like he says, it's like you wish you could unknow it, you wish you didn't know that it was there, but when you read it, you're like, oh my God. And I have this obsession when I go to the grocery store because I'm so mindful of what I'm buying. I have this obsession of looking what other people are buying. Like, I love looking at other people's carts and then looking at them and then being like, what's their story? Like, nice. I love, because there's some people that you're like, oh, it all adds up. Like, of course you're buying,
that makes sense. Yeah.
Processed everything. Okay. And then there's some people like, whoa, I never would have picked you for that guy. Captain Crunch with green milk.
Yeah. So, I mean, how much now are you still reading? And, I mean, even to go along with, like, to get ideas for recipes and then just to get more knowledgeable of the whole scene?
Most of what I'm reading and looking at are blogs. In terms of, like, I haven't read a book on the food industry in a while because I got to a point where I was like, I know it. I know this. I know
Yeah.
I shouldn't eat processed food. I know if I'm eating meat, it should be grass-fed. I probably
Yeah.
shouldn't have dairy and this, that, and the other. So I kind of got to a point where I'm like, it started to feel like too much information
Yeah.
and overkill. So now I just kind of, I look at blogs and I look at all different blogs. I mean, I read blogs like the Pioneer Woman. Is that what her name is? Why did I just forget? Yeah, Lee Drummond's. Whatever. I read.
You can give me the link later. We'll
Yeah.
put it on the post.
Can you overdub my voice saying her name right? I think it's the Pioneer Woman. She's very like meat and cheese and dairy and but I still love looking at stuff like that because I think that there's something about classic home style comfort food that I love, and
Yeah.
I'm always seeking to kind of get there, but without all the bad stuff. And
Yeah.
even if you look back at the beginning days of Tasty Yummies, there was cheese on pretty much everything, and it was always processed free. It was always gluten free, but there
Yeah.
was like, let's put more cheese on this. So I try to look at kind of the range, and then I look at people that are gluten-free, vegan, nut-free, just
Yeah.
whatever you can eat. They've taken it out of their diet, and
Yeah.
then they've made a blog out of it. And I find that to be fascinating, too, because some of it, I'm like, I know it's not processed food, but that sugar substitute that sounds like something that... and they do kill dogs. Like, I don't really want to put that in my baked goods. It
Yeah.
doesn't sound good.
Jeez.
So yeah, that's kind of where and I have a few food magazines, from the traditional Food and Wine to the Whole Living and everything in between.
Nice.
A fascinating thing about what Beth has done, and the reason why, I mean, it's great to see how informative, or it's great to see how much people are paying attention to food,
Yeah.
and corporate America is definitely reacting to it. You go to Wegmans and the Whole Foods and the Trader Joe's, and they're catering to what people want.
Oh, yeah.
And if half of that is honest, then we're heading in the right direction. But when people see my wife and they see how much weight she's lost and how much better she looks, and they're like, how'd you do it? How'd you do it? And she tells them how she did it. It's just like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. That's a lot of work. And then
They want the easy answer.
They do.
Oh, God, yeah.
They do. And then the other thing that I find fascinating is she has people once a month contact her and be like, I just went to the doctor, or my friend, somebody that, I work with, her daughter just found out she has celiac disease and all this stuff. And so she has people all the time that come to her and ask her, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And when Beth starts explaining to them, like, the blog and how you eat and how you do, it blows people's mind. And I'd say half of those people that have been diagnosed with it are like, fuck it, it's too hard.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to do it.
Oh, more than that. I would say 3/4 of my friends, good, close, personal friends, or, one or two friends removed, that have written me and been like, oh, I found out I can't have gluten, or my doctor told me I should remove it.
Yeah.
They just realize it's too hard, and they don't stick with it. And I'm like, it can kill you if you legitimately have celiac disease or a pretty hardcore gluten intolerance.
Yeah.
It will tear a hole in your intestines and will eventually kill you, or you'll get cancer. And that's the other thing, besides the explosive diarrhea, that keeps me from saying, I'll just eat this one chicken finger. Because at the end of the day, I'm like, one chicken finger once a month, twice a year might be the cancer that kills me, which is... delicious as they used to be. I can't do it anymore.
Not that delicious.
No, they're disgusting, soggy messes. But when you can't have them, that's all you want.
So I guess we can wrap it up. We've gone all over the place. I've enjoyed this conversation. What do you see for the future of Tasty Yummies? I mean, do you see a potential for you to even start putting more time into it, or? I mean, the easiest answer, or the easiest assumption, is that being a graphic designer, like, the idea of a cookbook would be like you have all the tools to do this.
I mean, there are days that my frustration level with the graphic design world and our career of it's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. We don't know what we're doing, and then we know everything that we're doing. There's some days that I'm like, man, taking money and finances out, the food blog some days feels like a sure thing, because I know that all I have to do is put some time into being creative with the recipes, and I put it out there, and there's this audience of people waiting. And, some of that is just stats alone, when I look at the people that visit my food blog in a day and the people that visit Hero's blog or website in a day, the numbers don't even compare. I mean, the people that are going and looking for recipes, the general public are all eating.
Oh, yeah.
The general public doesn't all need graphic design. So there's some days that I'm like, man, if money were no object, it would be awesome to get my teacher training in yoga, to cook all day, to go teach yoga. And I love my graphic design and I love that creative outlet, but to do that and to have no worries about money and to just make something when I have an urge to make it and to make a print or whatever it is and really put my focus in the food blog, and then someday have a cookbook and do public speaking about, eating gluten-free and processed-free foods. I would love for that to happen. The reality of it is that money is the root of all evil and the thing that keeps you from all the things that you want. I can attest
to that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you'd love to do what you're doing.
Oh my God, I would
too.
love to, but accounting is paying my bills right now, unfortunately.
And the thing about food blogging is I know I'm a smart enough person that I have seen all sides of it. I mean, I haven't lived all sides of it, but I read other blogs. I just read a blog last week from a woman who literally had gone to that other side. She had a TV show in the works with Food Network. She had a handful of books. She was on speaking tours.
Wow.
Her husband made enough money that her food blog was just what she did as a passion project, and it just grew and grew. And she was offering advertising all over the website, and it just blew to that extreme proportion. And she just wrote this insanely long blog post a week or two ago about how she's stepping back and going back to the roots of what it was just to do it for the love of it and not to worry about money and not to make the cookbooks and the appearances on Good Morning America and just to do it because she loved it, and when and if it went there, it would go there. So I try to put that in perspective and just say and part of her article was about how even at the biggest, when it looked like to everybody she had it all, she still wasn't, there's no income coming in from her blog. I mean, you don't make money doing a cookbook unless you're Paula Deen or one of those people. You just are not going to make a living on any book for that matter unless you're on the top seller list. So if it progressed to that naturally and it didn't cost me my life and, our savings, I would love to do it. But for now, I just kind of let it happen as it happens. And there's some weeks that I'm like, I've got this ongoing series with Free People. Mm-hmm. Free People has a blog that's mostly fashion, but they also put up DIY, like, hey, you can make this, you can make a Dreamweaver out of an old doily, that, and that's literally a post on there. They've hired me to do a weekly post, and every month it's a different theme. And then at the start of every month, I do like a seasonal shopping list.
Okay.
And so this has been and they pay me. It's not, I'm not going to get rich off of it, but it's I asked for a certain amount of money and they said yes. And it's been a nice, steady, little, small amount of money that comes in every few weeks.
Nice.
And it's kind of the first glimmer into like, okay, I can step further into this world and pull a little bit of rewards from stepping further in and giving a little more of my attention.
Yeah.
But I always have to check myself and say, don't go too far because the rewards won't be there if you go too far. Whereas with Hero, the more you put in, most of the time, the more you get back. So it's a hard balance because it's fun and I love doing it, and I love eating and I love that people love it and I love watching the numbers grow. So it's definitely a challenge to know when enough's enough.
Yeah. Well, you do a great job,
Thank
and I'm really glad you guys came down here and did this podcast. So
thanks for having
good
us.
luck with the future of it, and I know you guys are moving out west someday and hopefully that means maybe it helps the blog expand and whatnot.
That's a hope.
But thank you again so much. This was really fun.
Thank you.